Okay, so we're going. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about I know your TikTok. I love it. I love that you actually one thing I really loved was something that you produced that was about what to do for actually having like an undergrad, a job out of psychology
Yeah.
undergrad. And I loved that because I remember finishing my psychology degree and was like, what the hell am I going to do with this? So I want to touch on that, but I also want to touch on a little bit like who you are. So who is Bailey McFadden? Like,
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I'll start with who I am, I guess. I'm Bailey. I'm from Iowa originally. Born and raised there. I got my undergrad at the University of Iowa. I've always been interested in psychology. I took my first course when I was like 17 in high school. And ever since then, I was kind of like, okay, that might be something I'm interested in. I just didn't know quite what way I was going to take it. I didn't know if I was going to go more of a medical route or more of like a teaching route or like whatever it could be, right? I just knew that I wanted to do something in the form of like helping, especially kids and teens, develop appropriately and work with families and be in a helping profession. But as far as jobs go, that's kind of what led me to that because I know when I was going into my undergraduate degree, I thought to myself, like, well, what if I don't want to go to be a counselor? Like, I know I love psychology, but I don't know if I would love being a counselor yet. Like, I'm 18 years old. Um, and so that was like a common theme for me as I went through undergrad and something I considered a lot. And then I realized a lot of other people also considered that. And I heard it a lot like, you can only make money if you go to grad school. And I was like, I don't know if that's really true. I think there has to be certainly many other areas that psychology applies to. So that's kind of what led me to looking into more of those options.
yeah, I love that because I feel like we hear so often, oh, psychology is just a whatever kind of degree. It's like one of those degrees that people just kind of like toss to the side or whatever. It's almost like not important. But I feel like there are a lot of really cool applications that psychology has. And of course, like we both ended up going to grad school. But yeah, I feel like when I was an undergrad in psychology, and if I were to talk to anyone who's an undergrad in psychology, I feel like that would be a big concern of theirs is what am I going to do with this?
Mhm.
Um, And I feel like it's like there are plenty of avenues that you can take with that degree. I'm curious though about your experience in your undergrad. So what was your program like? What were some things that you really liked about it? Were there some things that you didn't like about it? I don't know. I'm thinking about mine. I'm reminiscing on some professors I had that were incredible. But yeah, I'm curious about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the University of Iowa, so much. The campus itself was amazing. Like the community I had there was amazing. I loved my professors. They had a brand new psychology building that was like really incredible to go witness and like study at and participate in different psychological um, experiments. Also, that was like a quick way I made cash during undergrad sometimes. Overall, I really loved my experience. It was kind of difficult just because I was a freshman when COVID hit. So my freshman year, we left for spring break. We didn't come back. Most of sophomore year was online. And then it was like junior, senior year, kind of starting to get back into the swing of things. So I will say that like my experience was definitely kind of like unique in that way. I know a lot of people went through COVID school, but it did definitely impact my time there. And it made it just kinda tricky because I got pretty quickly used to online school, and it was kinda hard to connect with my professors all the time, but once I was able to, like, junior, senior year, I think those were the times that I was more interested in connecting with my professors anyway. I was starting to think about grad school. I was starting to sit closer to the front, like, just different things like that. I had been doing online for a while. I was ready to connect with people, and that was really cool. I had one professor in particular that, like, wrote me a letter of rec for grad school, and he was really special. He did a great job. Yeah, I don't know. I think overall my program was really awesome. I would recommend it to everyone. I loved the University of Iowa. So,
That is really nice to hear because it's interesting. I hear a lot about like experiences in undergrad psychology, and I feel like I'm not going to say everybody because, of course, we know like in psychology that there is no absolute. But I feel like a lot of people that I know, especially in my program as well, I went to Georgia State University. And
mm.
it's interesting that you mentioned COVID. I honestly forgot about it.
Yeah.
But my my first year was 2019 that I had gone back. and I didn't even know I was gonna do psychology, but so you mentioned junior and senior year. That's when I feel like the same for me, like, when I got really involved in my program.
Mhm.
Um, I'm wondering, like, when you first went in, did you know you were gonna do psychology? Was that, like, a thing that you were like, "I'm gonna do psych," or did you kinda have another major that you transferred from, or any
I
of those
went in with
experiences?
psych. Yeah, I went in with psych, but I went in also, like, not knowing exactly what I was gonna do with it. I think originally my plan was to go to med school, actually, and I was, like, gonna go more of a psychiatry route, or then I was, like, thinking maybe I'll go get my PhD, and I know, we can get into that later when we talk about grad school and stuff, but, yeah, I went in with psych, but I went in also not knowing, like, what I was gonna do with it and just kind of having it as, like, a placeholder almost until I figured it out.
That's interesting that you I wanna touch on something, actually. I wanna jump there really quick
Yeah.
because you mentioned, like, grad school, and I feel like something that a lot of people, especially people that are in undergrad psychology now, kind of think about is that kind of track, is, like, um, PhD programs. You were talking about, like, a med school program, like, master's programs. I wanna jump forward just a second and then maybe go back about when you were early in your maybe, like, freshman, sophomore year, those expectations of what you wanted to do, how did they change from when you were allowed to graduate? Because I know for me, like, freshman year, I was like, "I'm gonna get a PhD. I'm gonna,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna do all this stuff." And then that, like, really changed as I approached my senior year. So I'm curious about, like, that interaction for you. Like, how did that
Mhm.
change?
Yeah, pretty much the same way. I feel like I mean, obviously, I think everyone goes into college a little bit, I mean, maybe more optimistic or more like, expectant of what they're going to be doing and what they're gonna do with it. And, at the time, it's like, "Well, 8 years of school doesn't sound that bad. I'll be a doctor and, like, I'll be doing this and that," and then you get towards the end and you're like, "Well, I'm tired. I don't know if I can do that much more school right now." I also spent some time working in a psychiatric unit at my school's hospital, and so I got to work pretty closely with psychiatrists and, kinda witness the more medical side of it and realized that wasn't for me. And then so that kinda narrowed it down to PhD versus master's, and then when I was looking at that, I was like, "Well, I can practice with either. I might as well go for the degree that's shorter, I can get done with it sooner, than go on to get my PhD later if I still decide I want to." So that was kind of like ultimately my thought process.
What was it like for you working as an undergrad in a psychiatric unit? Like, are there any experiences that are sticking out to you when you're thinking about that?
Yeah, yeah, it was really impactful. My unit was split. It was split between we had eating disorder patients on one side, mood disorder patients on the other. So they did not interact, and like whichever side of the unit I was on would flip flop depending on the day. This was also my junior year, so things are getting back to normal after COVID. But for a time, my unit was actually like the COVID psych unit too. So anyone that had a psychiatric condition and had been exposed to COVID came to my unit as well, which meant not only did we have mood and EDO patients, we also had geriatric psych coming up or medical psych coming up. Um, so in a lot of ways, I really value that experience. I got to work with a wide variety of people, a wide variety of needs, and expand my lens. It was just it was a lot though at the time, being like 20, 21 years old, kind of not knowing what I was getting myself into. I was working there full time while I was doing classes full time. And so I think I just kind of got burnt out. Um, and there was just yeah, I don't know. It was just hard. There was a lot of things about that job that were hard, but a lot of things about it that were really amazing. Especially with the patients that were there for treatment for eating disorders, 'cause they were there for a little bit longer, and I got to build really great relationships with them since they were there, and, we had a little bit more time to get to know each other.
Do you
So
feel like that is a topic? Actually, I'm gonna save that because what I wanted to jump to was a group that you're interested in working with. And I found that for me, I did I was a research assistant in undergrad, so we worked with a lot of, like, LGBTQ people. So that just naturally became, like, an interest of mine, so I was curious about how that plays out in maybe your future clinical work. But I'm wondering about if you had anyone that was coming to you that's in an undergrad psych program, and they're like, "I wanna get involved. What do I like, I want to do kind of this thing and that thing. And I don't know. Is there something about your experience that you could say, I don't know, what do you think about when that comes up? Someone kind of coming to you for advice in an undergrad program and saying, I want to do similar to what you did. Is there anything coming up for you that you feel like you would tell them or that you would
Mm.
want them to know?
Yeah, I think I would say that I would say to focus more on the population. So like if you have an idea of who you want to work with, like who you think you'd be a great fit for and you know what's really calling to you, then I would say find something in that domain and like focus less on what the role is. So if you know you want to work with kids, be a babysitter, be a teacher, you know, work in a childcare center, do whatever it takes to like be working with that population. Don't feel like you have to go and be working in a children's psychiatric center or like outpatient treatment for kids or whatever it might be, right? I think that just working with the population and like gaining more experience in those areas is more important than the specific role.
I want to touch on something too that I was just thinking about. You mentioned earlier letters of recommendation.
Mhm,
That's something that's really important for people that want to go to grad school. And I feel like that's something that I was kind of like aware of. My best friend is actually an LCSW, so she does therapy as well. And so I had her in my ear kind of being like, "Hey, you need to kind of be aware of this when you're looking at grad
mhm,
schools." And so there were a lot of people in my, I wouldn't say cohort for my undergrad degree because it was, I don't know about Iowa, but did you just have like a huge program?
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mine, it was that. It was like everybody is on like kind of different paths and everybody's like at a different time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, there was no like cohesive unit that was like, these are the people that are going to be with you throughout this
Right.
experience.
Mhm,
Kind of which was different in grad school because there are some people in grad school that are like that. But yeah, for letters of recommendation, was that something that you thought about like earlier on in your undergrad? Like, because I feel like for me, I'm thinking about like other people in my, like I was saying, like other people in my, like, that I knew in my program that got to like the end of senior year and they were like, oh my God, like I didn't even think about
mhm.
that. I don't know like where I'm going to do with this. Like, and they were kind of they were kind of really freaking out about it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about knowing that that's something you have to be aware of for grad school. Is there anything that you're thinking of in your experience that you kind of, I don't know, that you really jumped into when it came to like kind of achieving letters of recommendation from people?
Um, that's a great question. I don't remember when I became like aware of that requirement. But I feel like I kind of had it in the back of my head, just knowing that I always knew I wanted to go on to do more school. And so, like, I've heard from various programs that you need letters of rec or experience or things to kind of pad that. I didn't know exactly what it would be, but I think I did have that like in the back of my head that I might need something. Um, and then I remember like junior year is when I became more aware of that. Like that's part of why I got the job at the psych unit is because I knew I would want a letter of rec from there. Um, and then I ended up doing an internship abroad and I made sure to like ask for that letter of rec while I was there kind of thing. So um and I think I timing wise it worked out pretty well. I would say that you probably don't really have to worry about it until closer like junior senior year, but um, I do think that's a good time to start kind of plotting who you would might be able to get a good letter of rec from.
Okay, you mentioned internship abroad and my brain lit up. What can you talk about that? What did you do? What was this experience?
Yeah, I went to London and I was working as a teacher's assistant in a year three classroom um, for a summer. So I was there for like from May to the end of July. It was pretty short, but I mean, I really loved it. I never wanted to leave. I considered going to grad school there instead. I didn't, but it was yeah, it was really great and, really interesting just to like I mean, even in London, an English-speaking country, one that is very fast-moving, very big city, um, just to still be placed in, like, a different environment and still experience, like, this level of culture shock and have to accommodate, um, especially from someone that lived in Iowa, was really great for me, I think, just to be able to once again expand my lens and be able to, you know, just be able to experience different people and like, cultures and traditions. So, Yeah.
I love that. I want to tap in on this too because I did a study abroad in Denmark.
Mm,
Um, it was a spring break thing, so it wasn't like as long, but it was still like a really cool, like immersive experience. And that was something that I wasn't even thinking about that before, but I would say for undergrad psychology, like it's a really good opportunity because psychology is so versatile. Like
mhm,
you can be a psych major and then, jump in on study abroads and like language programs or jump in on study abroads and like, it doesn't have to be as rigid of like, it has to be psychology.
mhm,
Um, so, and I think about my experience, kind of the way that you were talking about how it's like it was really incredible and really changing and everything. And I think, yeah, if you can study abroad in any opportunity, like definitely. And
mm.
did you, were you in touch with any like scholarship opportunity or anything? Did the program,
It was
because at my school, the program put us in touch with like, these are the scholarships if you
mhm,
meet whatever. And a lot of people met scholarships that didn't think that they were going to, or they thought,
mhm.
they just weren't aware that there were those kind of opportunities available. So like, I don't know if you had anything like that or not.
Yeah, yeah, I got, a small scholarship for being a Gen or a first gen student. Sorry, I, like, go back and forth between Gen Z and first gen in my head sometimes now. Um, and I actually also got, like, a small job, if you will, for the internship, study abroad program. They like as a content creator, just they wanted like 6 videos or posts about being there, and it was like a few $100, but certainly helped while I was there. And actually, they like allowed it to go onto your tuition, so that way like FAFSA could be applied to the summer term too.
So you would
But
have gotten
yeah.
it like in the form of like a student loan refund, right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah. Cause that's what it was for me is I thought there were a couple of people that went on my trip that were like, I didn't think I was going to be able to do this because I didn't
mhm,
think this opportunity was really available to me because of like financial restrictions. And then we kind of like in an orientation, they were telling us like that there are things specifically designed. So yeah, I would say if anyone is like looking into study abroad,
mhm,
before you like just throw it out and are like, this isn't even an opportunity for me, I would really ask the program director about what kind of funding is available for stuff like that.
mhm. Yeah, it's really
Um,
not at least at my school, it wasn't that much more expensive than just to take a summer class through the school. Like, I
yeah.
mean, out of pocket, it was the plane ticket and what you paid for while you're there.
Mhm.
So,
Um, I want to shift into grad school and some of your decision making when you were going into grad school. I know we touched on some of the prereqs for it and stuff, but prerequisites just letters of rec and whatever. But
mhm,
what was it like for you when you decided? Well, I'll just ask you, what kind of program are you in? Like, what's your T? Like, what's going
mhm.
on with your program?
Yeah, so I'm in an online program. It has an in-person campus. It is a faith integrated program. It's Colorado Christian University in Lakewood, Colorado. And I kind of say that it's funny. My program kind of chose me. I had originally applied to Iowa for their PhD program, and I like didn't even know if I was going to do PhD or not. But I was still like, well, it's my alma mater, and um, whatever. And I actually felt really certain about Iowa. I was like, I have my letter of rec from a professor and from the hospital. Like, I surely have this. And I got waitlisted, and I was really sad. Um, but I think it truly, looking back now, I really think it just all worked out for the best. And I'm so glad I didn't go to Iowa because I'm really grateful to be able to have flexibility now and like move out of Iowa. Um, but for like context, I guess my now fiance at the time boyfriend, we had done over 2 years of long distance when we first started our relationship. And we were living in the same college town now at the time. And I was like really thinking I just didn't want to do long distance again. So I knew that when I got waitlisted from Iowa, I wanted to find a program. In my head, I thought I was going to do a hybrid. I thought I'll do 1 year online and then I'll go in person, which didn't work out that way. But because my boyfriend had another year left of school. So that's what I was looking for. And I was just scrolling through the KCREP directory. I saw Colorado Christian University. I knew that I liked Colorado. I knew it wasn't that far from home. I've enjoyed it when I've visited before. And I clicked on the website and I was just scrolling, and then I got a call right away, and it had the little caller ID saying it was from the school. I answer, and it's this older man named Dale, and he's like, "I just had to call. I saw that you're from Iowa because like I had filled out the little interest form." He's like, "I'm from Iowa, from a farm out there in like Humiston, which is where my mom was from. She was from a really small town farm. Um, I had to call you myself directly, basically. Like, I don't know. It was just really sweet and it felt so personal. And I just remember immediately feeling so like welcomed by the school and so important and in touch with them and like wow, we already have this connection here. I already feel like I know someone that is on my side in my corner and is rooting for me to come here. And then I started looking into the school more and I realized it was a pretty affordable program, um, a pretty good program as far as acceptance rate or graduation rate, job placement rate, etc. Um, and I realized that they had a clinical mental health program with an emphasis in marriage and family. And so I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I could do both technically if I really wanted to. So those were the big selling points, but I feel like I just kind of was drawn to it really.
And I think that's really important to mention that that you say that there's a clinical mental health counseling track with a marriage and family like specialization because
Mhm.
for people that don't know, like, marriage and family therapy and clinical mental health counseling are kind of like taught separately. I mean, and they're even
Mhm.
different credentials. Like I
Mhm.
know that some people in the practice I'm interning at are LMFTs and then, LPCs or, so
Mhm.
typically they're thought of as like separate entities. So that's really cool that you found a program that was like integrating that as
Mhm.
well. I want to touch on, you mentioned that it's a faith-based program as well.
Mhm.
I'm curious about how faith is integrated into mental health counseling. I feel like for marriage and family therapy, like I feel like more I could kind of follow where how the integration would be like pretty cohesive there,
Mhm.
and even mental health counseling as well. I'm just curious about from the perspective of how they're teaching you, like what is that? I don't know what's that like because my program is doesn't have that integration. I'm at the University of Kentucky,
Mhm.
um, which is also an online program that I went online, kind of what you were talking about, like checking the credentials. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of other like stuff there about like why I chose that program, but like it obviously doesn't have those integrations. So I'm curious about like what is that like? Yeah, what's that like integrating that into like mental health counseling?
Yeah, difficult actually, a little bit harder than I imagined. I guess I grew up in a faithful home, but also like not one that was super structured. So I would go to church. I knew about God, but I wouldn't have considered myself to be um, super structured, religious, yeah, I guess if that makes sense. I knew that I was interested in the idea, but I also knew that I didn't have maybe as much experience like going to church regularly or like, understanding the Bible. But I knew that I was open. And I guess I just didn't realize, like, how big of a part it was going to be of my program. Um, Also, I thought maybe it would just be, like, I had to take a couple classes and I would learn more, and that'd be a great thing to be able to apply in my counseling, but it turns out it is a very big emphasis in my program, and I've grown to really appreciate that, don't get me wrong, and I do think that I've been able to definitely delve in deeper and understand more, not only about Christianity because it's a Christian school, but also just about other spiritualities and like meditation and mindfulness practices and different things like that. So that's been really cool. When I say hard, I guess I just say that theology is kind of hard. Actually, going in and having to decipher the Bible and cite it in APA formatting and different things like that were trickier than I anticipated, but I've enjoyed it. And I think that it does have a lot of very useful skills for working with clients that are spiritual in any sense, let alone a Christian sense.
Yeah, I think it's really cool as well. You mentioned other spiritualities because yeah, spirituality can be so broad and it can be
Mhm.
experienced in so many different ways. It's interesting too because when you talk about meditation and mindfulness and stuff, just thinking about a lot of the empirical data that is behind, the helpfulness of mindfulness. Um, And, it's not effective for everyone. It's like I had this psychology teacher who would always kind of give us the 99% rule. It's like we can have a theory that works for 99% of people, but nothing in psychology is absolute.
Mhm.
Um, so I think about that all the time. But to really think about how beneficial it is and how much empirical data is behind it. I want to touch on something too, about the integration of things in programs, because that was something that I wasn't quite prepared for with my program either. So
Mhm.
when you're going into a counseling program, like mental health counseling, marriage and family therapy, if you do, whatever, and there's like a crossover. So for example, in my school, we have rehabilitation counseling, and then we also have clinical mental health counseling that are the two specialization tracks. So one of the things that I wasn't quite prepared for was how much those two were going to cross over. And so it's kind of like what you're describing of, how much like faith is crossing over into your program. I don't know. It's just something I don't know if anything's coming up for you, but what's coming up for me is just kind of not that it's a bad thing in my program or anything. I just wish maybe I would have, I don't know, known that that crossover was going to be so present in like the curriculum and the teaching and things like that. I don't know. Is anything coming up for you with that? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. I feel like I've said that when I don't post my school online, but I tell people when they DM me, they've asked me like what school I go to and what I would recommend and whatever else. That's something that I say a lot. I'm like, well, my school is faith integrated. And if you are someone that's like, that'd be cool, I'm open to that, um, maybe really consider it because it is actually a big part of it. It's not like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I would recommend going here if you're actually really driven to provide faith integrated counseling, and if you're someone that really isn't interested in it, definitely avoid the school, find something different. Because yeah, it is kind of hard to understand, especially when you're just going through like the big overview of grad school and trying to find a program and then also trying to decipher, okay, well, what exactly are my classes going to be and how much emphasis of this is here and this is here. Um, so yeah, I agree, I guess is what I'm saying. It's difficult to kind of understand exactly how much integration is going to be involved before you're actually in the program.
Yeah, and I think at least I know in my experience, I was so excited to go to start the program. I
Mhm.
was looking at the graduation date and how long is the program, all these things. And for me it was like, okay, I want to graduate by, May 2025, and I want to blah blah blah, all this stuff. And so, jumping into a program, I don't think I like jumped into my program, but I'm thinking about the people that I know um that are so excited to get started and how excited I was and how important that thing was to know. Because it's like,
Mhm.
you can start a program, but then if it's not quite a match for you, there's going to be some issues that are going to come up down the line because I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe it's just not what you thought or whatever, but I want to touch on PhD programs with that because for me, um, I really wanted to do a PhD, and I'm thinking about it now, and it kind of makes me smile because now I'm so grateful I didn't do a PhD. Like, no shade to PhD people, but like, I wake up and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so happy I didn't do a PhD.
Mm.
Um, and I found that a lot of people are the prime motivator behind it is that doctoral title or the PhD, like it's prestige or whatever that comes with that.
Mhm.
And for me, it was interesting because it was actually the grad students that I knew when I was an undergrad who were in PhD programs that were convincing me to not do a PhD program.
Yeah.
Um, so for you, what was it for the point when you were like, I hear you're mentioning you got waitlisted and you were like, oh my gosh.
Mm.
And then you went to the master's route. What are your thoughts on that interaction now? How do you feel about, I don't know, is anything coming up for you when you're thinking about, maybe even going further after your program to finish the PhD or whatever? Like, I don't know, where
Yeah.
are you at with that?
Yeah. I remember thinking I was already pretty sure I wanted to go the master's route, but I remember thinking I had a friend that was applying to the PhD program at Iowa. And I was like, well, I'll just apply at Iowa. And if I don't get into Iowa, then it's not meant to be. Like that's fine. I'll go do my master's somewhere else then. Um, Yeah, and looking back at that, I'm very grateful that I didn't do a PhD program. I could not imagine having another 2 years of school to do after this year. I think definitely doctoral title was the calling to me. I have, like, this video of me as a kid, and I'm my sister was being born, and I'm like, "It's not Bailey, it's doctor. They're calling me doctor now," and I was just a brat, but I was like, "I'm gonna go be a doctor," and, like, it's gonna be so funny and whatever. But I actually started I don't remember who I was talking to about this actually, but, or if I was just doing research, but something about the fact that, like, yes, as with a PhD, you might be paid more, but also you're less hireable because if someone else can do the same job for less pay, then people are gonna wanna hire that person and not you. And I was kinda like, "Oh, well, that does make a lot of sense." And my goal right now is really just to start working and, get into the field. So I figured if I were to go back for my PhD, that's another thing. Maybe, whether it's later in life or once I have my career established and maybe I have more funding and time to go get a PhD, then that's an option I'd like to take. But yeah, I think master's programs for sure are probably personally the way to go. So,
Yeah, and I really love that the emphasis of if you don't wanna do research, don't do a PhD program.
mhm,
Um, yeah, and I just remember being, like, kind of young and hungry and being like, "No, I wanna be the best in my field, and I wanna all these
mhm.
things." Um, and then kind of now as I'm like you're mentioning when do you graduate?
December.
December, okay, yeah, so now as we're approaching, like, the end of this program, I know for me, I'm like, if I have to look at another discussion board post, like, I'm gonna throw my computer out the window. Like,
So good.
I like, the way I am now is I'm just and I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm just getting by, like,
Mm,
my grades have been great, whatever, but I mean, like, when I say getting by, I mean, like, I'm like, "Okay, when is the assignment due? It's due Friday, I'll do it Friday afternoon." I'm just at a point now where I'm like, "Just please get me out of this, like, I don't wanna do this anymore." Um,
mhm,
and so I think about what it would've been for a couple just like you mentioned, like, a couple more years of, kind of the traditional school route, and it's like, oh my gosh. I honestly props to anybody, like, doing that did a PhD. My ex had a PhD, and I was like, "Good for you," that's really impressive.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it's interesting when I think about, like, prospective grad students, I hear this PhD air, and I'm like, "Do you really wanna do that, or are you just wanting some kind of, like, prestige or something that you think that you're
Mhm.
gonna have?" And then I would say, "You're good enough," without that. But I'm curious about when you really made that decision, and you mentioned that you were kind of let down, but then you're going into the you were in the master's program now. What did you wanna study research-wise for a PhD? This is just a personal question.
You know, I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
I have some ideas still that I think about, a lot to do with technology and children and the effects on I'm sure we'll see a lot about COVID and all the babies raised during that time. Um, but something within that realm for sure, as far as the social awareness, and skills that kids have nowadays is crazy, and, definitely, I think there needs to be some more research on it. So if I were to go for my PhD now, that's probably the route I would take.
yeah. Um, I wanna shift into one more thing. So, practicum and internship. You are in your internship, I'm
Mhm,
assuming? Yes. This is a whole topic, and I don't wanna overwhelm you or me, but there are a lot of things that I'm thinking about, I wish I would have known before I started my internship. So, I wanna ask you about your experience in internship. What can people expect in a practicum and internship? Yeah, we'll just start there. What's kind of your gauge for this?
well, I guess I feel like I got so screwed over in my internship experience at first, and so I guess, like, just to start there, know that if you get screwed over, if you don't like your supervisor, if something happens, whatever else, it'll work out. I mean, I hope for the best for you, but it'll probably work out for the best. And especially if someone or something isn't right before you even begin, like trust your gut. That is a good sign to get out and find something different anyway. You are not stuck with any placement. You have flexibility and ability to move. Um, Something about internships I didn't really realize until looking for one is that a lot of them hope that you will work for them after graduation. So, like, that's something important, I think, for people to keep in mind for themselves as they're looking for a site. Do I want to work here long term? Is this someone that not only will be my internship supervisor, but like somewhere I could see myself continuing to grow after graduation? I would say those are the biggest things to look out for right away, I guess. I
Oh
don't know
my
if you have
God.
anything else.
So important. Yeah, a lot's coming up for me, but I'm gonna, but yeah, that is something that's really, really important to know, I think, with your internship site is that it's not permanent. And if it's not fitting, if it's not working for you, talk to your faculty advisor because I'm echoing a lot of what you're saying. And I love that thought of if you wouldn't work here, you probably don't want to do your internship here.
Right.
That's so important. I'm so tempted to ask, but I'm not going to because we would just be geeking like all day about it. But what kind of site are you doing your internship at now? Yeah, what kind of population are you working with?
Yeah. I'm working for a family counseling private practice site now. And I work with honestly like kind of a range. So I've gone into this saying that like my goal population was children and teens. I work with two kids right now. And then the rest of my clientele is like adult individuals or couples for the most part, I would say. Um, so yes, and actually practicum when I first started, I was doing mostly couples, and that was a huge shift for me, which was kind of crazy just to get thrown into right away. But I learned that I really enjoy it, and so I'm hopeful to like continue going down that trajectory a little bit of couples and kids and teens.
Were you scared when you got your first couple? So
Most.
when you say that, I am thinking of me. I am terrified. I was terrified. What was it like that first session with a couple? Like, what were your nerves doing? Were you like, I'm an imposter. I don't deserve to be here. That's literally what was going through my head.
Weirdly enough, I felt more calm in my couple session than I did my first individual session with an adult, actually, because I feel like maybe the couples came a little bit more naturally to me or something. I'm a mediator. Um, so like that felt more natural than to like sit in a space and be like, so what do you want to talk about? Like it's just the two of us. So yes, I think couples felt a little bit better, but also my first couple session was this fiery couple, very passionate, exactly what like the stereotype of couples therapy is. Like they're yelling at each other, and like at one point, one of them's like standing up. I thought he was gonna leave. And I just remember thinking, like, what do I do right now? Um, am I supposed to intervene? Am I supposed to watch them fight? Like, what do I do? Um, so yeah, that first session was interesting. And actually the advice my supervisor gave me that was really helpful is she's like, I said something like, I wanted to use my teacher skills. I wanted to be like, "Friends, like nice words, please, or like stop." And she said, do it. She says, use your teacher skills. You have those skills for a reason. Get in there and be directive if you have to. Like, they didn't come here to fight. They didn't pay you to fight. They're learning how to be better. So if you need to get in there and stop them, then you have every right to do that and redirect the situation. Um, which is just helpful because I think when you first start seeing clients as a graduate student, especially, it's like you have such a framework of being a blank slate, not intervening, not putting any personality or too much direction out there. So that was a helpful switch, but it was very, yeah, overwhelming at first for sure.
Yeah, I think that's so funny that you mentioned that because my experience was so opposite. Like I felt like with individual, I was like, okay, let's do it. What do we do? And I feel like with couples, I was like, oh my God, and it's interesting when you go into supervision after working with a couple and you like learn about all these terms like triangulation and, am I siding with one partner over the other? And like, am I, all these things. Um, but I like what you said about like bringing yourself into the session, because I think for me, that's still something that I'm like, as a new little therapist, I really struggle with is bringing myself in and being like, okay, what would Dustin actually say in this situation? And,
Mhm. That's
instead
a
of
great
like,
way. Yeah.
yeah, putting on this facade of
Mhm.
this all-knowing professional, which is just not true. Um, yeah, that's so funny. And interesting that you mentioned that. And also your perspective too, because it's like I hear from there's a clinician at my practice. I do have private practice as well
Mhm.
that just feels right at home with couples. And they're just like, I don't know how you work with individuals. And it's just interesting to hear that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's really awesome. Learning to bring yourself in and learning to like be present with them.
that's
Um,
hard.
yeah, it is really
Mhm.
hard. Yeah, it's super hard. So when do you finish your internship? Are you about to finish it or are you going until December?
I'll go into the summer and then I'll be done.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Um, it's really time consuming and most internships are unpaid. So it's
Mm.
like that is a huge thing when you're an adult that's living your life. It feels kind of exploitative, but yeah, it's just a thing that we do. Um,
Mhm.
I'm wondering when it comes to internship sites or anything, is there anything else that's coming up? Any kind of thoughts, like last thoughts or anything that's coming up for you when we're
Um,
like as we're like kind of talking about this?
I guess a couple things I've learned recently. Oh, well, first of all, actually, as far as money goes, I know that most of them aren't paid. And at least like from what my school told me is it could be like potentially unethical to be paid.
Hmm.
Um, depending on like the state and whatever. But my original internship site offered an educational stipend, which is like $100 a week. And the site that I'm at now, I do group counseling with the school that I work at. And so I was actually able to get paid for those groups. All that to be said is like look for unique ways to get paid from your internship if you can, and look for unique ways to get hours if you can. Because I recently found out that you can pick up some extra hours at call centers or from teaching, like giving presentations, stuff like that. So just like look for those unique little ways because there is a lot of workarounds sometimes, and it's worth exploring. That's for sure. So
Yeah, and it seems like a lot. I think it's like 600 hours an internship, and
mhm.
then 240. I don't know, whatever. So there's something.
250 direct.
Yeah, direct hours, and the
Mhm.
direct hours can be tricky if you don't have the caseload.
Mhm.
So I want to jump in and say this. I would make sure that whatever site you're going to is going to be able to provide you with the direct
Yes.
hours that you need.
And that you don't
Um,
have to like outsource them and like find clients yourself.
yeah, because honestly, it's like part of the bargain, right? Is I'm going to
Mhm.
do this for this internship site. They're going to provide me with, supervision, whatever. Um, but also, yeah, I feel like it kind of falls into the realm of their responsibility of if we take on an intern, can we provide this intern with what they
Mhm.
need? And then they'll, do X, Y, and Z. So,
Right.
yeah, I would check on that because there are a couple of people I was almost worried about that at one point in my internship was like direct
Mhm.
hours and client
Mhm.
caseload. And there were people in my faculty, like in the class that we do, I'm sure you do a class weekly, that were having to like, pick up a second site or whatever because they didn't have the direct hours that they needed, which is so frustrating when you're doing work like for this thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to ask you one last question. Is there anything kind of in your experience so far, which by the way, I'm so excited. It's really exciting because you're going to go on and do so many cool things. This is just the beginning of everything that's happening, which it's really awesome to think about. Like it makes me really happy
Yeah.
when I think about it. Is there anything that you kind of, um, your experience that you want to share or anything that's coming up or anything you feel like maybe people need to know or whatever? And if
Um,
not, that's fine.
I feel like just rely on support systems. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, I know I've made like a lot of videos about this on my page, but like grad school is truly just such a time for self growth and reflection as much as it is for professional growth and skills development. You learn a lot about yourself, and it's definitely a process that makes you stronger mentally and physically because you understand more about what you can withstand and you learn how to adapt to those things and keep moving forward, get more organized, but you can't do it by yourself. So rely on sports. Don't be afraid to go get your own therapy. Um, ask your friends for help, ask your family for help, and chat with your cohort often, I would say, or like the biggest saving graces that I've had for my program thus far.
Yeah. I think for me, I really find solace in complaining sometimes,
Yeah.
but I get really scared to complain because I'm like, no, I don't want to. But I found with my cohort, sometimes when I'm like, I just really want to share this, a lot of them are like, thank you for saying that because I didn't want to
Yeah.
say anything because of X, Y, and
Uh-huh.
Z or whatever. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay. So honestly, you in grad school, find a complaint squad and complain it out because
Yeah.
dude, I remember so many classes I'm sitting in and we would be like messaging each other. And those are the people that kept me
Yes.
alive and
Sometimes it's
engaged.
just
And
it's validating.
yeah.
It's like, "Oh, I'm not the only one that thinks this is really hard."
Hmm.
Like, everyone is struggling with this. It's hard.
Yeah. Because largely a lot of it sucks. A
Yeah.
lot of it sucks. And so it's like if you have to, you can't pretend like just like find someone to
Mhm.
complain with and complain with them. And then after you graduate, you're gonna kill it. I love it.
I like to have, like, my grumpy mornings.
Mhm.
Like, I go and I'm a preschool teacher during the day, and then I do counseling work in the afternoon and evening. So in the morning, don't talk to me. Like, in the morning, I'm
Mhm.
getting my grumpies out, and I'm complaining about anything that stands in my way, and
Mhm.
that's what we have to do. My
Yeah.
fiancé knows not to wake up at that time. So
Yeah. No, complaining has saved me so much.
mhm.
Um, Bailey, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I love your content. I love seeing your stuff. I'm so excited to see what you get up to in the future. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Um, and now I know someone in Iowa,
Yeah.
which I never
Well,
knew.
Arizona now. I'm a West Coast girly
Arizona.
now.
Oh my God, I'm so yeah, Arizona,
Mhm.
Arizona.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
warmer, right?
It is much warmer.
Yeah,
So much warmer. Yeah.
yeah, it's warmer. We love that.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really.
Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it was so fun, and it was great to meet you and get to chat more.
All right. Yes, I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.